Welcome to our Convergence introduction. So glad that you're continuing to walk with us in understanding the Refocus process. We, of course, have our overview of the entire process, and then in the previous session we looked at the discovery process. In this session we want to look at icon number 2 and give consideration to the convergence. And the convergence concept is, quite honestly, a very simple process, but a very important process that has a spiritual foundation. The spiritual foundation comes to us from Jesus visiting the 7 churches of the book of Revelation in Revelation 2 and 3, where Jesus steps back and says, I have some things to affirm, and I want to share with you some things to correct. And in that interaction, we see that He speaks about the bride of Christ beautifully and affirmingly in many ways. But then in some ways, He speaks constructively critical about the church needing to reposition itself for more effective or more biblical or more theologically significant ministry. In the convergence process, we really do a good to great type exercise where 3 things come together. In the book Good to Great, we see an expression of this by way of businesses looking at their leadership, looking at their clients, and looking at their potential. And Jim Collins in that book probably is the first one to popularize this approach. Now, of course, since then we've seen many others that have followed this in the church arena, helping the church think in terms of how does a church go about best positioning itself for its God-given and highest mission impact that it can potentially have. And I think there are 2 exercises that I've discovered over 25 years of ministry that are really important. Number 1, you have to look at your community honestly, accurately, and fairly assess the dynamics that are at play within it. Number 2, you have to be able to assess your church ministry. Why is the church there? What has God historically done through the church ministry? And what might God want to do in a fresh season of ministry? And then thirdly, to look at leadership and to give consideration to the heart of those who God has placed in the role of leadership at this particular moment. And where those 3 pyramids intersect really gives you what I would refer to in Jim Collins' work, Good to Great, is the sweet spot of the space where the ministry of your church can most effectively be performed. Now, walking through that process, obviously, the spiritual foundation is the most important thing that informs that. And so the second exercise that we do in the convergence process and discovery is this. We build a pyramid that leads to the point. The point of the mission of the church. Now, it's first and foremost built on the foundation of Scripture. You see, in the Refocus process, there are 3 things that we deeply believe. Number 1, that Scripture is our authority for what the mission and ministry of the church ought to look like. Number 2, we understand that Jesus gave us that Great Commission as the focus of our work. And then number 3, that God gives leaders, especially pastoral leadership to the church, to help lead the church onto this mission that God has assigned to them. And so the foundation of the pyramid of this new convergence pyramid, this positioning of your ministry, is first and foremost based upon Scripture. As the church and the leadership read the Scriptures and say, what are those imperative instructions for us? What are those timely words that God has given to us that we believe are the foundations upon which we build our work? We look there first. Second, we pull together the potential in the community, the leadership passion and the church's purpose, and take a clear and simplified look at what those 3 things are speaking to us. And then we put it all together and we build one key concept with perhaps a descriptor that helps become the foundation for the direction that God is giving to the church's ministry. You see, that key concept makes it incredibly clear, incredibly simple, incredibly direct what it is God is giving by way of the vision for ministry that He wants for His church. The convergence exercise is, quite honestly, very, very simple. But it requires most of all what I call thinking in the presence of God. You see, most churches and most ministries, most pastors will spend more time getting ready for a single sermon or a single Sunday then they will spend an entire year giving consideration to the vision and mission and direction of the church's ministry. But when you stop in the convergence exercise and think in the presence of God about these scriptural and foundational aspects and where they all come together, you will have a clarity of direction like few have ever discovered.